Well, good afternoon. I am Ted from Ted's House of Comics, and I have what I think is a pretty special box. This is probably my largest unboxing to date. I've been basically got involved trying to sell off some of my duplicates and older books here about a year ago. I do a lot of my sales on eBay, and I also do purchases, typically a lot of things through Heritage auctions, where I'm typically trying to upgrade the condition of my existing books, and then I turn around and sell off my older duplicates and lower grade copies. A lot of people, when they talk about Heritage, they'll say that why do you buy from Heritage? The fees are just too great. It really doesn't matter what the fees are from a buyer's perspective. The fees are really impacting the sellers. Where the seller is basically paying typically a negotiable up to 10% fee on their sales, in addition to a 20% buyer's markup. And it's a buyer's markup that the buyers really don't have to worry about. When you basically are putting in your bid to Heritage, you just need to factor in that additional 20% and make certain that when you do put in your bid, that, for example, if you want to put in a bid of $600, what you end up having to do is at Heritage, you put in the bid for $500. That would be $500 plus 20% or $600. And as long as you, understand that you are having to put that additional amount in, you're basically fine. So, without any further ado, I thought we would go ahead and I'd share with you again this box that I got here back recently. And it really is, I think, a pretty special box. It's got a wide range of things, some silver, some bronze, some Marvel, some DC, primarily CGC, but also a little bit of CBS. So, with the very first book I've got to share today is actually Justice League of America #1. This is actually a book I purchased as basically a spec book. It's one I've already got in a higher grade, a 6.0, and this particular is a 5.0. But it's a beautiful book. I'm always happy when I'm able to pick these up at a decent price, and I think I definitely was able to do so in this situation. One of the things that if you follow the comic market, you have definitely seen a significant drop in a number of the major keys. And with that said, I've been trying to, get in there and upgrade the condition of some of my books at hopefully a lower price. The question is, am I buying still at too high of a price? You'll never know, at least not for a while. But right now, I felt that the market, or that the prices I'm able to pick these books at are really, good prices. So I'm happy to be able to do so now. Next up is a Submariner #1. This is Submariner's very first solo series. And it's a book that I have in an 8.5 in my personal collection. But again, it was at a decent price. So I thought I would go ahead and pick it up. But an 8.0, and in this case, this off-white pages is really a pretty cool book. And, with the fact that the Submariner is coming to the MCU here, again, it's a book that I'm really happy to be able to pick up. Now, this is a book that is really like trying to catch a falling knife right now. I have picked up a number of Werewolf by Night 32. It's a book that I actually had purchased off the newsstand many, many years ago. And when I had got it graded here last year, it came back to 6.5. So I've basically been working on upgrading the condition of this particular issue in my collection. And right now, in my personal collection, I've got a 9.2, but this was an 8.5 I was able to pick up. The 9.2 I think I did really well on. The price has basically rebounded. I did set a low price for the year when I purchased my 9.2. Unfortunately, an 8.5 I wasn't quite so lucky, but that does happen. Next up is Giant Size X-Men #1. In my mind, this is a must-have key for the Bronze Age. It's the first appearance of the new X-Men team. I now have, I believe, 9 different copies of this issue. Whenever I see it, I've been basically trying to bid on it, and I tend to win this book a lot more than what I intend to. And I've gathered quite a few copies. I think that right now the price is definitely depressed. It continues to be depressed, but I really think that you're going to see a pop in this book once we start finding out more about how the X-Men are going to play into the MCU. Question is, when is that going to be? It's doubtful we're going to, we're definitely not going to see anything in 2023. Maybe we'll see something in 2024, but we'll definitely see something in 2025. Next up is Conan, number 23. This particular book is a first appearance of Red Sonja. There's basically 2 issues. There's number 23 and there's number 24. 24 has a first cover appearance of Red Sonja, but 23 seems to be the book that collectors are after. I was able to send in a copy last year that actually came back as 9.6. And again, when I saw this issue came up, I decided to go ahead and go for it and basically add it to my collection. I believe that this one is actually a white pages, and my book came back as an off-white to white pages. So what I'll end up doing is probably moving this particular issue into my personal collection and move the off-white to non-white into my sellable lots. Next up is a Fantastic Four number 50 in an 8.0. Now, this is, in my mind, just an incredible cover. I've always loved this book. Basically anyone who is out trying to collect Silver Age comics, when it comes to Fantastic Four, the 48, 49, and the 50 are really the must-have books to have in your personal collection. I had a raw copy in my PC, and this is actually a graded one, which I'm basically going to move into my personal collection, and I'll probably send my raw off to be graded at CGC, see how it comes back. Now this book I am really, really happy about. I probably overpaid a little bit. It has came off, but without any further ado, this is Incredible Hulk 181. And again, this is the first appearance, or I should say the first complete appearance of the Wolverine. A lot of folks look at 180 as being the first appearance, but that is actually the first cameo, and this is really the must-have book. So I had an 8.0 in my collection, and when I saw this book pop up here recently on, it's actually one of Heritage's signature auctions, I just decided I had to have it. I probably paid maybe $1,000 more than where the market is right at present. But again, be able to pick this up at 9.2, I'm really, really happy about it. Again, this is a great book, and, to have it in 9.2, I'm really, really happy. And, again, I think it's one of those books that you're going to see appreciated value. It has came down some, but, I imagine it's going to continue its upward trend here in the near future. Next up is another book that I was fortunate enough to upgrade. Giant Size X-Men number 1. Like I said, I have multiple copies of this. My next highest copy is a 9.2. So my 9.2 is going into my box to sell down the road. And my 9.4 right here in white pages is going to be going into my personal collection. These 2 books, the Giant Size X-Men and the Incredible Hulk 181, are definitely your must-have bronze keys, and, books I'm really excited to have. Next up is basically, again, one of the spec books, Fantastic Four 48 in a 4.5. I was able to pick this book up at a very reasonable price and figured, why not? Somewhere down the line, as prices improve, I will be selling this particular book. And again, you know, it presents very well in a 4.5 in off-white white pages. Next up is a Ghost Rider #1 in a 9.2 white pages. My current copy is a 9.2, but it was an off-white to white pages. So again, I'm going to be basically moving this copy into my personal collection, and the other book will become a book to sell. Next up is an early Spider-Man. This is actually Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man #4, first appearance of the Sandman. This book has really seen a lot of fluctuation. When the movie came out last year, you definitely saw this book spike, and since then it has definitely came down in price. This is a book, I believe I've actually got a slightly higher grade. I think I've got a 7.0. So with that being said, this is a book that I will be looking to sell somewhere down the road. But again, you know, I love, whenever I see any early Spider-Mans, I definitely try to jump on them and basically get them added, you know, in my collection in as high of a grade as possible. Speaking of which, here is another Amazing Spider-Man. This is Amazing Spider-Man #7, and this is the first appearance of the Lizard in a 7.0. This is a book that actually I was missing in my personal collection, so I just decided that in 7.0 I really wanted to grab it. Ideally, you know, myself personally, when it comes to the Silver Age, I tend to try to pick up books that are at least in the 6.0 or higher. I do have sometimes I will have books that are a little bit lower, sometimes a 4.5, sometimes a 5.0. But a lot of times I'm just having those in my collection as a placeholder until I can find a higher grade. Here is again another early Spider-Man. This is a Spider-Man #9. This is the first appearance of Max Dillon as Electro in a 5.5. This is a book I need in my personal collection. It's a 5.5, a little bit lower grade than what I would like. But in this situation, again, I'll if I see a book I like in the future, a decent price, in a higher grade, I'll pick that up. And moving on, this is a book I was really happy to pick up, Avengers #1 in a 6.0. My existing copy was a 4.0 I had purchased here a while back as a placeholder. So when I was able to get a 6.0 for my #1, I just, you know, had to jump on it. Again, it was at a very decent price. And, you know, I really was happy that I got it. Let's see, moving on. Now this is actually where I have got a CBCS copy. And this is actually a DC. This is a Batman 251. And this is, in my opinion, one of the most incredible Batman Joker covers there are. I had a slightly lower grade raw copy in my personal collection. And, you know, when I saw this, I was able to purchase this at a significant discount, not only due to the drop in comic prices, but also due to the fact that it's a CBCS book. A lot of times, you know, these books, although I typically won't buy them, if the price is tempting enough, I will definitely do so. And in this case, it was a cover that, you know, I truly adore, and I just had to have it. And again, an 8.5, you know, and even let's say, you know, if I send it into CBCS, you know, maybe it will end up at an 8.0, maybe it'll end up at a 9.0, but probably within a half grade, plus or minus, of 8.5. So again, I think it was a great pickup at a good price, and one I was really happy to get. And the next one is also a CBCS, and this is one that I feel that I really got for a steal. This came up at really a significant discount to where it had been selling at. You know, this is, again, in my mind, one of the most iconic, important Silver Surfer covers that exists. And I really was not happy with the copy I had in my personal collection, which was actually a low-grade raw copy that I probably picked up 30 years ago. And, you know, be able to get this at a 9.0, even though it's from CBCS, I think it was well worth the price I paid for it. You know, again, you know, I mean, don't worry about only purchasing CBCS or CGC, because, you know, CBCS, you can sometimes pick up, you know, again, what I would view as an incredible discount. And when that happens, you need to jump on it. Moving on down is, and this is a book I was really, really happy to pick up. This is showcase number 1, the first appearance of Fireman Farrell. To be honest, I really don't know a whole lot about his backstory, but Showcase was one of those series that DC used to usher in, or to use to basically showcase or to test out the market of their various characters. Actually, Showcase number 4, back in my day, 30, 40 years ago, was the must-have copy. And even though it still is an important issue, I just don't think it has the same importance today than it did back then. But issue number 4 was actually the first appearance of Barry Allen the Flash. And it basically was viewed as ushering in the Silver Age of comics. And it was, you know, really just the book to have many, many years ago. Showcase also will have done the first appearance of Green Lantern. Let's see, Metal Men, Raven Bold, Lois Lane, issue number 9. You know, the list goes on, but they really used it as kind of a showcase to, you know, kind of test the markets before they would bring in some of these other issues, basically to market. Again, here is another book, a Star Wars 9.6. This is, again, one that I am actually going to add into my personal collection and replace my 9.2. This is a 9.6 in white pages, and again, a really cool book to have. I remember actually going to watch Star Wars with my uncle, who got me into collecting comics, back at a movie theater in northern Indiana. It was actually Goshen Theater, and it was you know, really incredible sci-fi movie back in when was that? Back in mid-70s, I think. What was it, 76 possibly? But definitely was very cool. Next up is Strange Tales 169. This is actually the first appearance of Brother Voodoo. This is actually an 8.5. I had been looking for 9.2, and I have actually put in a few bids for 9.2s. I just have not been successful in winning one. But an 8.5 came through at a, you know, I think a pretty decent price for what I paid, and one that I was happy to pick up. Unfortunately, that run is a little bit lower in quality, so it was one that I just wanted to upgrade. Next up is, again, a very important issue, X-Men 94, which is actually the second appearance of the new X-Men team that basically came out. So Giant Size X-Men 1 was the first appearance. This was a second appearance in the X-Men series. And I've got in my personal collection 8.5 that actually had purchased it. Well, actually, it came mailed to me through a Marvel subscription I had back in the day. And It actually survived in a 8.5, which I'm really, really happy. I may sell it, or I may just keep it out of sentimental reasons, but the 9.2 will definitely go into my personal collection. Now, this is a story that I hate to admit, but when the new X-Men came out, I did not like them. And because of that reason, I actually canceled my subscription to the X-Men. And needless to say, I was really disappointed because I basically wanted to complete that series back in the, probably about 25 years ago. And even then, the X-Men from 95 on up had gone up significantly in price. And I really regretted to this day for having canceled my subscription. But I was a young kid, and unfortunately I made the wrong decision. But what can you say? Next up is another icon, is another very important key. This is the first appearance of Batgirl, of Barbara Gordon in a 6.5. I do have a slightly higher grade. I believe I have a 7.5 in my personal collection. But this is a book I remember chasing at the San Diego Comic-Con back in about 2011. And I looked at books over and over and over from dealer after dealer after dealer. I remember looking at, Super Old with Ted. Also, I was looking at Dale Roberts' booth. I was looking at JVN's booth. I was looking at Steve, I can't think of his name, but I was looking at a lot of the booths, a lot of the dealers who I've basically dealt with over the years. And I really was disappointed I did not pull the trigger on this particular issue back in those days. But I did finally pick one up here actually in the last year or two, and I now have probably 2 or 3 copies of that. And it's, just a great book. Now, even though I don't necessarily collect signatures, this is actually a first appearance of the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy, in a 9.2, and it was signed by L. Milgrom, and also Marv Wolfman and Jim Shooter. So it basically has 3 signatures. Haven't decided what I'm going to do with this book yet. I do have a higher graded copy. I believe I've got a 9.6. So this one I may keep just due to the fact it's got the signatures, or I may end up selling it somewhere down the road. But again, this was a book, came out at a decent price with its 3 signatures, and just decided I would pick it up. This is a book that I was really happy to get. This is actually the first solo story, the first Thanos solo story, which actually showed up in Old Books, Logan's Run, issue number 6, which came out in 1977. I don't think a lot of people realize that. And it was up in auction at 9.8, and it was a book I wanted to get. I've got a number of raw copies. None of them, though, would probably come out as a 9.8, maybe 9.2, but definitely 9.8. So when I saw this, I figured I would go and pick this copy up, and I will probably end up selling off some of my raw copies, which I may grade or I may just sell raw. I haven't really decided yet what I'm going to do, but this was, again, a book that I really wanted to have. Probably the more important issue is Iron Man number 55 that everyone basically seems to want to get, which is really, kind of more the first appearance of Thanos. And, that book definitely goes for a pretty penny. Next up is, this is just a book, sentimental purposes, Machine Man number 1, 9.8, Jack Kirby. I have always loved Jack Kirby, and in a 9.8, price seemed right, and I figured I would just add him to the collection. Basically, whenever I see Jack Kirby, especially the DC Jack Kirby, I have been basically picking up all the raw issues, and I'm able to Forever People, New Gods, etc. Mr. Miracle. Kirby really did some incredible artwork, in addition to doing some pretty incredible stories that I really was intrigued with. I was sorry to see that they ended as quickly as what they did back in the day. Next up is a Marvel Premiere #1 in 9.2, which is the first appearance of him as Adam Warlock. And I'm just thinking here a second, but yeah, so this would be basically where it is Adam Warlock. His first appearance is really in Fantastic Four, and oh gosh, I'm terrible here. I think it was issue 66 that he is basically attributed as being his first appearance. However, in that issue, he is never named. In this particular issue, he is named. And, again, it was one that I really wanted to pick up in a higher grade. I believe I had a slightly lower grade. And to be able to get this at a 9.2, especially with that black cover, really, really happy. Next up is, now this is actually one of the more newer books. This is actually a copper issue, first appearance of Cable and New Mutants 87 or 9.8. I sent a few copies of this off to be graded here. It actually just came back in a modern submission. And unfortunately, I was not really happy with the grades. None of them came back as a 9.8. So I figured I would pick this one up so I could basically have a 9.8 in my collection, personal collection, and the other issues I will sell off. And again, this is a book that I'm really happy to pick up. This is the first appearance of Zatanna in Hawkman #4. Now, this is an issue that, again, I didn't have even in a raw copy. I do tend to be a completionist. So I have basically most Marvel and DC dating back from probably the mid-50s up into about the year 2000 or so. I've got pretty complete. I am missing a few. Unfortunately, I don't have Amazing Fantasy 15 or Amazing Spider-Man 1 or Fantastic Four or X-Men #1s. But I do have most everything else. So this was a book that I was happy basically filled in a big hole in my collection. And that was it. And last but not least, I've got one more big key issue. This is actually Daredevil #1 in a 5.0 off-white to white pages. Again, I actually have, I think I now have 3 copies of this. My high grade is a 6.5. This is a 5.0, and I also have a 4.0. The 5.0 and the 4.0, I'm actually looking at probably selling somewhere down the line. Well, I basically keep the 6.0. I have been looking to upgrade my 6.5 though to maybe a 7.0, but I just have not been able to find one at the right price yet. But maybe down the road I'll be able to do so. Well, like I said, this is by far my biggest unboxing, in one single unboxing that I have done to date. I definitely seem to have won a lot more auctions here than I had expected. But again, as you can see, I think I got a number of great deals and a number of great books. And a lot of these are really, in my mind, major keys. One thing I will say that if you do want to, kind of keep an eye on what I'm up to, definitely you can follow me on Facebook. You'll also find me there under Ted's House of Comics. And you will also find me on eBay with an eBay store at Ted's House of Comics. I am basically a distributor for E.G. Gerber products, so I basically carry all the Mylar and backboards, acid-free backboards, fullbacks, halfbacks, basically in all the various sizes. So definitely check me out on my eBay store. I also do sell my comics there. And one more thing is I will be doing one of my first comic conventions this upcoming November. I am going to be basically purchased a table at the Berkeley Comic Con that is scheduled, I believe, on Saturday, I believe it's November 5th, but it is the Saturday, the first Saturday of November. And I'm really excited. I am working on basically creating my distributor wall now to be able to display the comics I intend to sell, in addition to selecting the books I am going to bring. I probably will bring a pretty eclectic set of comics to this particular show until I kind of get a feel, and from there I will probably expand. But I do have probably around 50,000 comics, basically silver, bronze, and also a little bit of copper that I am looking to sell. And as you could tell, I definitely have all of the major keys in multitudes of grades. So, again, I hope y'all will, come check me out, if not on Facebook, on eBay, if not on eBay, at the Berkeley Comic Con. And again, I just want to thank everyone for watching this video, and happy hunting.